All right, guys, let's give a shout out to all you webinar attendees. I'm really excited about today's webinar, which is all about themed environment design. My name is Frank Cordero, and I'm the host of today's webinar. For those who don't know me already, I'm a former cleanup animator from Disney back in the Florida studio days when we were together back then, former concept and art director at EA Tiburon. I'm a freelance 2D 3D artist and currently doing content marketing for CG Master Academy. Today's webinar is sponsored by CG Master Academy. CG Master Academy is the leader in online digital arts education in art, visual effects, games, and now animation. CGMA always strives to offer the highest quality education through the most affordable, accessible, and relevant courses in the world. As a team founded by artists for artists, we're committed to enabling you to become a better artist by learning from the industry's best. And speaking of which, man, we're so happy to have you. I'm going to go ahead and let's just change my share screen. I want to get this up here. Here we go. All right. Hello. So your host for today, that's a good picture of you, by the way, man.
Oh, thanks.
Your host for this webinar is Luke Steadman, experiential designer. It's a really cool name for a very big encompassing. He is CEO and principal designer at Steadman Design Studio, which is based out here in Pasadena, right?
That's right.
Yeah, yep. Very cool. Awesome. And then he's got some amazing and notable projects, to say the least. He's done work on Shanghai Disneyland, the Enchanted Storybook Castle, Universal Volcano Bay at Universal Beijing, and a couple things like Transformers Metro Base and Jurassic World Adventure. Very cool. Universal Studios Singapore. So they liked your work. They brought you back. That's great. So then we got the Warner Brothers Studios tour, the making of Harry Potter, Warner Brothers World in Abu Dhabi. We also got Ferrari World, for you race fans. That's cool. Motion Gate at Dubai Parks. And then Bollywood Park, which is also in Dubai. Boy, they're doing a lot of building out there, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you get a chance to travel out there?
I have not had the pleasure yet. No.
Oh my God. All right. I've never either. It looks like another dream. And then finally, Luke teaches at Art Center and CG Master Academy. So Luke, we're so thrilled to have you. And let's go ahead. I'm going to hand over the reins. We're not going to do Q&A just yet because actually Luke has got a little bit of a presentation to share with you. So I'm going to let Luke take over the reins. I'm going to turn the screen share off. And Luke is going to take over for the next few minutes. Just tell us a little bit more about what he does and how special it is. Luke?
Well, thank you so much, Frank. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you to CGMA for hosting us and allowing me to teach on their online academy. So it's been a pleasure. I've been doing it for about 3 years now with CGMA, and I love it so much. The reach is so great, like we were talking earlier. Global reach, people from all over the world, and it really works well because, this industry being location-based entertainment is something that happens all over the world. And we end up working, like you mentioned, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, in the East, in Asia, and here locally. So yeah, I have a little presentation. I have some visuals to talk over. So let me start my video. All right. So I'm going to pause it every once in a while. When I pause it, that happens. Okay. So let's play this thing. I have some illustrations and things to show you. And, one of the reasons why I got into this industry is because I really like the idea of doing something in my mind and painting about it and then seeing it become reality. And it's been a pleasure in the last 15 years or so being able to work in this industry and see some of those projects being built. Not all of them are, sometimes that happens, but these are some examples of things that were built. And this one in particular that we're looking at is in Dubai. This is Motion Gate theme park. And you can see there's a lot of studio represented in this particular theme park. This one in particular is, DreamWorks Animation. So Kung Fu Panda and Shrek and Madagascar. The projects that I'm sharing is, based on some of the POVs that I illustrated, along with an art director, creative director, producer. These are large projects that include a large number of designers and people to make them become reality. Not to mention the construction crew that builds these things. And oftentimes, I haven't even visited Dubai, and here we're looking at a project that happened in Dubai. So I don't even get to visit the actual end product sometimes, just because I haven't had a chance to fly over there. But what ends up is just, it's amazing to see it come to life. And that's the thing that I love the most about what I do. It's a little different from what someone might be doing in film or video games. Like, for example, in these attractions, we're taking an IP and we're imagining the space. And so we have to be very careful with how we are representing that IP, being following its guidelines and sort of how it's defined. And then, we go through the same creative process that what you might think a film would do with storyboards. So these are examples of storyboards. But instead of a film, our storyboard is communicating what the experience ends up being. And that process is a little bit different. I'm excited to share what that process is with you guys. I'll go into it here with a project that Steadman Design produced. So Steadman is a studio that is in Pasadena, although we've been indoors for the last year working from our homes. Back when we had a place to gather, we sat down and brainstormed, what could we do to show, potential clients and also people who just want to know what we do as marketing material to express in a portfolio. We came up with this little round ride, and this kind of goes hand in hand with some of the assignments that I give in the class, in that we're developing an icon, and this icon attraction is something that is a lot of fun to look at, but also a lot of fun to ride. It helps tell a story. So that the story in theme parks is a little bit different. We need to tell that story on the scenery, in the ride itself, in the ride mechanism itself. And so I'll get into that a little bit more later. So you can see we do a lot of visualization. We'll do things in 3D. We sketch. We have that creative process of going from a blank sheet of paper, write about it, sketch about it, and then eventually put it into 3D. And then we actually will do some scale modeling. In this case, because we were inspired, our creative process was inspired by paper models. We went ahead and did our scale model out of paper and some rapid prototyping with 3D printing. And even in this case, is a little unique. We got to put some mechanics into it, so it actually moves. And this is a really good showpiece that illustrates our process of how we put something like this together. It's a little more, because it's so spatial oriented, we have to imagine what sight lines could look like. So 3D models like this really help you out to kind of crouch down, look at the space from the guest point of view. So Steadman Design Studio is, it's a passion of mine and something I'm really happy to be involved with. The greater team, that is. So here's an icon. This is the design process for the class. I'm going to go really quickly through all this. Icons like this, these are rides. Icons can be just about anything, but in this case, it's a ride. So in my design process, I did some research, I did some sketching, and I kind of whittled down the sketching into something that revolves and spins. And then this one is, it's sort of like Dumbo, where you get in the ride and it lifts you up and it spins. As I narrowed down my process, I got into the 3D modeling aspect of it here. So did some iterations on the 3D and then eventually painted over it to end up with the icon final design render. In my class, that's the first thing we do, and then we go into some variation on design process. I'm really big on design process. It's my favorite thing to do to really teach. In this case, we're doing a different icon, and we're using custom brushes. So with the custom brush engine in Photoshop, I really, this is something that I really love to do, because a lot of what our early concept is in elevation. This process works really well. So we create custom brushes to create little thumbnails like this. And I'm going to show different ways I've created imagery through this design process with custom brushes. One of the great things about custom brushes, in my opinion, is that your eye automatically sees the order in the chaos real time as you're producing this imagery, and you see alignments, and that alignment as you go forward will give you happy accidents. So it's like forcing happy accidents so that eventually when you get to that moment where you see the order in the chaos, you now can come up with a composition, a design composition that you may not have seen in the beginning, or you may not have drawn from scratch. So this is an example of how using an architectural kit and create elevations. So these elevations are kind of where we start. Photoshop is a really unique tool set where you can take an elevation right away and put that in 3D space. And so they're like 3D cards. So Photoshop 3D is a fun little tool that we utilize in the class where we can rapidly visualize different POVs. And so here's another example of that design process where we're using dual brushes to come up with unique shapes. And it's a really quick process. You'll see here, that's a couple of strokes, and then to mirror it on itself, you have a little building there, little sci-fi building. So this one's a little different, where the last one was neo classical Roman architecture type scenario, where this is more of a sci-fi example. So the process is it's really fun and really unique, and this is something that we'll do in our class. So in this image, we're going through each little thumbnail there, and then we put them together for elevations. You put it into 3D, and then you paint on it, and it's something like that in a few hours, which is really nice. Go really quick. Okay, so now we're into spatial design, and here we have Fantasyland from Disneyland. One of the things that sets apart the location-based entertainment so much is that we have to think about the space, and the best tool that we have in our tool bag are elevations and plans. So these are some elevations that I drew up for my project and the plan here. And so when you have those two together, they communicate space, and that space needs to communicate the story as if you were walking through it. And that's the part of theme park design. It's a lot like video game, like level design. The tools that we're using are 3D tools, but then you also have Photoshop 3D and this card technique that works really well for really quick POVs. So I got some POVs, and then I did some thumbnails and value, and did some color studies, and then worked it up in Photoshop, painted over it, and got my final piece here. So there's the final piece that I did for the class. So yeah, that was really fast. And I covered a lot of topics. So now we can start, talking more in depth about any one of those things. And I'm happy to take any questions.
That's great. No, this is exciting. And I was just an eye opener in that 10 minutes that you kind of just went through some of the highlights of your process. There are things that, I knew 3D wasn't part of Photoshop for a little bit, but the way you're using it is so smart. And, I think hopefully it's gotten better over time in terms of the interactivity part. It's one of the reasons why I kind of stayed away from it initially when they first introduced it a few years ago. But I got to believe that they've made some inroads on that.
Was a little clunky at first, but now I think it's smoothed out. And in this latest, Photoshop CC is, I think it works pretty well. It works a lot better now.
Well, cool. And so I guess what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit of the sort of the Q&A. And if you've got things that are visuals that are kind of, come up in the questions that I give you, or maybe from the audience that you want to kind of throw into the mix, feel free to, to say, hey, look, I would like to share something with regards to this,
okay.
And we'll go from there. So cool. So let me go ahead and just start out with our first question, because I think, it's such a niche industry. So how did you discover the experiential design business? Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
It's like a niche subset of environment concept art. And was there anything you did before as a primer that kind of even got you directed in that direction?
Yeah. I went to school for illustration, thinking I would probably go into film or something like that. But where I went to school, where I'm from Idaho, and I went to a small school in eastern Idaho called Ricks College. And while I was there, I was looking for just any sort of work, but the industry's not up in Idaho. And I didn't have any family or friends that lived in California. So, for those that that don't live in California that end up having to travel there. That's very much the case for a lot of us. So you just kind of look for what you can in your vicinity. And for me, it was 2006, 2007. The housing boom was at its height, and a lot of people were doing some crazy projects in their basements. There were also some crazy like hotel projects. You know, people were looking to flip their homes, so they wanted to create awesome home theaters. And so I hooked up with an interior designer. She wanted to use some of my illustration skills to do visuals of what her design was. And then I ended up designing some of those rooms myself. One summer, a friend of mine, his dad was flipping a home, and he wanted to put a Star Wars home theater in his basement. So I ended up doing that. And then after a couple summers of doing these interiors, and they were horrible. Like, I'm too embarrassed to show any of it. But essentially, that gave me a portfolio that I could then build on. I was doing illustration fundamentals at school, but I didn't really have much of a portfolio outside of my classroom homework. And a lot of the program that I was going through was very academic. So we did a lot of head paintings, figure drawings, and things like that. Was a great foundation for me. It didn't get me in anywhere close to having a portfolio ready for like an art director to look at for a film, or let's say a video game. But I had this crazy interior design portfolio, and that got me an internship at Thinkwell down here in California in Burbank. And so that was my first job, and it got me moved down to California. And I didn't know much about the location-based entertainment industry outside of like Disney and Universal. We had gone to Disneyland when we were kids, and we do a little Universal too. But we were, I guess as kids, we watched a lot of Disney movies. And so that was always in my head, oh, that's a cool job, but I didn't think I didn't really know how accessible it was. When I got that internship at Thinkwell, this design studio, they're a really great design studio. They've been around for about 20 years or so. Mm-hmm. At the time, they were fairly young. They were about 5 years old. So they kind of exist outside of the Disney Universal industry. That it's the same industry, but location-based industry. And it's kind of hard to understand, like, what am I talking about? Well, live events, museums, traveling experiences, and art exhibits now, these are all kind of fall within this industry, not just theme parks. So there's a greater industry that chock full of different projects that these design studios tend to take on. And so there's a small community, but there's all these other design studios that you can go work at. And I ended up learning all of this at my time at the studio. I was there for about 6 years, from 2007 to 2013. And I learned just about everything I know from them. So there was my early influences, the principals there, and everyone that I worked with there. And so some of the projects that are in my portfolio are from that studio. And then, and that's sort of how I got started.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. No, and I was going to ask you, what inspires you to do the work you do? Like, is there one person you look up to now in your field, and why? I mean, tell me a little bit, if maybe it's multiple too, Yeah.
So I really do look up to the principals at Thinkwell, and some of the other principals that are in the design studios around. I'm impressed by people, their backstory there at Thinkwell is like they were at Universal or they were at Disney, and then they either, I think for Thinkwell, that was when Universal went from here in LA to Florida. They moved their creative studios over there, and they decided, you know what, I don't want to go live in Florida. Let's just start our own studio. And that's super inspiring to me. For whatever reason, if you got laid off this last year, if you got, you decided to go separate ways on any other project, now you have that opportunity. That's what's inspiring to me. Go start a studio. I had that in the back of my head. It kind of happened organically, but the sort of like the steps to getting there was just having a freelance career that explodes And then you start hiring all your friends. You're like, I can't do this all by myself. And that group of people ends up being, you know, the company that you start. And that's kind of how it worked for me. It was very organic.
So basically, for you, you know, it was just one, like, I just need more help. Like this project,
Yeah.
you know, and so literally the start of a company is like, okay, you start with yourself, do as much as you can, and realize, holy smokes, I have blind spots, or somebody that I know is better at this than I am. And then you start kind of reaching out. So two
That's
people
right.
could, yeah. So, and
Yeah.
how many people are, how many friends are at your company?
So, you know, it's a
Yeah.
project-based industry.
Yeah.
And they scale up and down. At the moment, you know, the people on my project right now, I think there's 7 of us. So it's not a lot. It's a small, and I like to keep it small. You know, we'll grow to the project at one point. Before Steadman, I had another company with my friend Hao Wu. We called it Opaque Creative, and I think at the most we had 25 people, so that was pretty crazy. And we grew that for a project. And so it's fun. It's like every project's different. I do my best to keep the people that I like to work with. I work with them as often as possible. But then, you know, like you said, if I got a project that is unique, then I'm looking to hire someone that has those unique skills. And, you know, the skill set that's required for this is quite diverse. You know, I work with architects and engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers. I work with people that know video really well, projection, audio, robotics, animatronics, fire effects, water effects. You know, we do shows. So we do stage shows, we do parades, all this stuff. So I work with directors that know live entertainment. I work with stage producers, stage managers, all these people with a theater background as well. So the diversity is pretty interesting. It mixes it up a lot. I'm not always working with illustrators and concept artists, although, you know, that happens quite a bit too. But, you know, beyond the concept art, we're building something. So now we're getting into architecture. So that's kind of where things depart a little bit from, let's say, building it in 3D, which you're going to take it another step.
Cool. Now, did you have like I don't know, outside interests when you were growing up that kind of even gave us a clue to whether or not this was going to be something that you would do for a living? Or you know, I guess I'm always curious, you know, about the path that an artist takes. Sometimes it's very single-minded in the beginning. And then other times they kind of rotate through a few different things, you know, like maybe I tried playing drums. I remember thinking I was going to be Neil Peart for 2 seconds from Rush. And then when I realized how bad I was, I gave that up quick. But, you know, I don't know for you. I mean, do you cultivate any outside interests, and do they help with your main interests as an artist?
Yeah, the diversity of skill sets that I need to employ in my job, besides the art, the concept art that I love, is diverse enough that it's like I got to the point where all my hobbies were useful, and I didn't plan that. It just worked that way. So I really like to build things with my hands. You know, when I was a teenager, I worked in my summers as a landscape landscape designer, and then I would maintain those landscapes. And then we would do, I also got a job doing siding for a couple of summers, you know, so a little bit of construction, things like that. I like working with my hands that way. And I also like to build little models and things. And then I ended up building models for work. And I just love it. I love doing little scale models and building with different materials.
So there's room for analog development in what you do. I mean, I noticed that very, very distinctly. I mean, I know we've gotten so caught up in digital tool sets, and they're so helpful in so many different ways. But I mean, it seems like, you know, if you're good in traditional media, potentially there's a space for you in this area of experiential design.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even in earlier concept phases, we usually, you know, on some of these bigger projects, we need to see that in real space. It's nice that VR gives us a digital tool option, and that's really, really cool. It's helpful, but in my opinion, it does not replace the actual physical miniature.
Yeah.
And also the ease of that. You don't have to download software. You don't need a headset, head-mounted display. You can just take your miniature with you. And so when we get into the field and we're like, that color needs to go darker, or that texture needs to change, or something like that, you could just be like, see?
That's awesome, man. That's great. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and continue on the next questions here, and let's see what we got. How different is the work from being an environment concept artist to being an experiential designer? What are the questions you are trying to answer in this role?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I kind of touched on this before, we'll be interfacing with an architect. So when it comes to architecture, what is the type of thing that like a concept artist wouldn't necessarily learn, that maybe an architect or other similar roles like set designer or production designer? So, I do have experience teaching outside of CGMA at Art Center, and I know that program pretty well. One of the things that I end up exposing a lot of those recent grads to is dimensions, like universal dimensions of like what a door is, what a window is.
Yeah.
When we're doing storefront designs or facade design, when we're telling all that environment, if you're doing an environment POV for a video game, you don't have to worry about how high the window seal is off the ground, or what's the dimension of that window, and are those windows repeating, or are all they going to be custom? Because that's an added cost. So that's a little detail that helps a lot in down the road, that you don't want to necessarily skip it in concept. So people with experience with building, they have an advantage here. So we're going to build this thing, and it needs to last for 20 years. So if you sit down and draw something that would work in a video game, like a 100-foot tall icon tower, it may not be in the budget of a theme park, and it may be impossible to build. So that's something that I really try to focus in teaching in my classes: real world building constraints, and try to think about, how do people like follow the space throughout the narrative, the story. How does that work? But also, how does it function? So in a lot of ways, industrial design kind of comes into effect on this process, in that the form does follow the function, but it's a little different in that the story needs to lead, is paramount. So if we need to tell our story, that function and the story kind of go hand in hand. So the best way I can describe is like the difference between like an architect's plan versus a theme park plan. Many architects will take approach of like the form follows the function, but in a theme park, they're thinking, yeah, we need all the circulation to work in a master plan. We want all our people to go through the front gates of our theme park and then filter through. But what are they seeing? And that's a question that we asked. Number one, what are they actually seeing? Where an architect's kind of like, well, we need a capacity of 100,000 in this building, therefore it's going to be this size, and that's what they see. So it's a little different there.
So you get a chance to help layer on a story component, I guess, right, to enrich this experience on top of the functionality that seems to be very, very much present and top of mind for architects. Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. So I'm not even going to ask that in my next question, because you already asked it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me then, because you're working with, other departments like the major architects on a project, and I guess maybe, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my slides here so that I have a visual for this question. What does collaboration look like on a theme park attraction as a designer, and how do you kind of manage like your feedback channels, both with the leads on the projects, and then when you start kind of working with people inside your studio, because I'm sure it affects, your decision-making on a lot of levels, right?
Yeah. So this is fascinating, and something that I think is unique to our industry is that we when we go to design an attraction with a ride vehicle and maybe a track, like for example, maybe a roller coaster. There's several different types of attractions and even several different kinds of roller coasters. But when we go to do that, there are safety constraints and safety problems issues that we need to adhere to on the level of like a military or space grade project. We don't want to put anyone on our roller coaster and end up with someone getting injured or worse. So there are some hard boundaries, and knowing those boundaries is really helpful for a designer to say, okay, I can't go past that. So each system, or roller coaster in this case, each system is going to have a unique set of safety restraints or constraints, or design boundaries. So interfacing with whoever is designing the roller coaster, the mechanical engineering and a lot of times in projects, it's usually the manufacturer, the person that's designing, and they are a wealth of information on their product. And this is also the case with Disney or Universal. A lot of German engineer companies that do amazing roller coasters. A lot, so some come from other countries in Europe, some from other places all around the world. So it's quite diverse. But you'll be interfacing with the ride engineers, but also interfacing with the architects, because a lot of times we're putting facilities over those systems, and then the civil engineering on top of that, and then the safety layer, which is also, what if the ride breaks down and people need to get off the ride, and then you have the show set and the audio and the special effects and the ride program. I mean, the list kind of keeps going. All of these people and their unique skill set are coming together on a massive project team, and they all have to coordinate together. So that's sort of like the design team. And so when you're drawing, a piece of show set, you're taking all those things into consideration. Make sure that, if someone comes by on a ride, they're not smacking their head on a piece of scenery. So that would be really bad. But also it's telling the story really well. It's doing everything narratively and creatively. So that's very unique to the industry. And I think I haven't even gotten to the corporate side of it. And the differences between clients, working with a large studio versus clients working with clients that have never built a theme park before or never built a ride before. Yeah. So a lot of times, because of that, not only we're designing, but we're also putting on the sort of the changing hats, and we're being the educator as well. So we're teaching, we're informing, very nicely and as softly as possible, so that not only we can say, hey, this design works well because of A, B, and C, but also you may not want to go with those other designs because it's gonna cost you so much money, because you'll have to do the whole thing because you didn't put this or that or the other. So I'll give you another example. I was on a studio project. We were interfacing with the ride manufacturer of a roller coaster in pre-concept. So one of the reasons that you might do that is because procurement takes a long time. You may even have a lineup of people that want to buy that roller coaster from that manufacturer, but their factory's not big enough to do more than a couple at a time. So it's years out. But also, how do you know where to put the piles for the architecture if you don't know where the roller coaster track goes? So that's just a kind of a crazy part of it. So we end up working with these people in concept on the studio job. And so that's a responsibility that's just not, you don't see that with a lot of other clients. I've also worked with clients in different areas of the world where they won't actually procure or even think about getting involved with the manufacturer until after like a detail level of design document done in CAD. So it's just way later down the road. And so the problems dealing with different clients and that sort of thing, man, they vary a lot.
Are you, and it sounds like to me that depending on where the client's level of being able to visualize can vary. My experience is the least creative you are personally, the more you need things spelled out. That's a lot of front loading of your efforts. Are you in the bidding phase still when you are dealing with potential, or are they already signed on the dotted line clients? Like, have you ever had a chance where you had to kind of throw in the ring, do a concept pass, do all this stuff to kind of spell out, all the bells and whistles, and then suddenly they're like, nah.
Yeah,
What's
absolutely.
that like?
It's sometimes I will do some, I guess, blue sky work where there's not a lot of risk involved, and I'll try to help them, guide them. But I think as a business owner, I'm not interested in giving them some work that then they choose a competitor or another studio over me. So hopefully, whatever effort I'm giving them, it's going to turn them back to me. It's just further marketing for myself. So I think there's an aspect of business there where we are negotiating, like you said, in the bidding phase. We're negotiating, but also trying to help them understand, we're the right studio for you. And that's also based a lot on your reputation of building. Or your reputation of solid concept design on things that have been built, which kind of makes this industry tough to break into. Studios are really great places to start for young designers who want to break into it. And you start at a studio, then you got those big projects that do get built sort of in your resume under your belt.
Well, I was going to say, and it's a good segue to the question that I have right now with regards to your class a little bit. So what's unique about the class you teach, especially if you're trying to figure out maybe you're either in the business, maybe you're aspiring to be in the business, where they want to level up in their career, what can I look forward to your class experience, including the feedback component?
Yeah. So I do my very best to personalize all of my commentary, and it's a lot easier when our class is smaller. But as it grows a little bigger, I do my you can only spend so much time. But I do love all the different projects that people are coming up with, and sort of the subject and that I try to focus on a lot is the spatial design. So that's really it's more akin to like video game level design, but unique in that because we are building it, we're really putting ourselves in the shoes of our guest, which they experience it linearly. There's no loading screen. There's no like checkpoint load or anything like that. They're starting from the very beginning, going through the turnstiles, and based off of social experiences that we can observe, we can anticipate what some people might do or how they may react and get involved in the theme park experience. So we can design a master plan that we think would work best for where we're building. So there's some research involved with the culture and the location, and also the market. There's quite a bit of research involved with that. But once you get past all that, we can just kind of get back down to like the basic human behavior. A lot of our reference points, definitely here in the United States and especially Californians, is Disneyland. So I'm thinking of the guest experience. Disneyland is the first thing that pops up. But once again, it's quite diverse. I mean, there's all sorts of really cool projects out there. But if you're thinking about Disneyland, what's unique about that experience is that you can smell the popcorn. You can touch some of the things. You can hear different things happening. You get the background music playing different. It changes depending on what land you're in. It's a big part of the narrative. And then you have signage that helps you find your way. So it's called wayfinding signage. You get marquee signs. So all these different things kind of come together, coalesce into this experience. And so that's why I call myself an experience designer, because I'm thinking about all those things when I am designing the space. So I'm doing this environment, and I'm designing facades and stuff, and all the things that you might expect from a environment design from a concept artist. But then that extra layer of the experience is all taken into account. So with an attraction, you may have a queue design, you may have a loading design, or like a load unload room, and then an exit retail experience, and maybe a corn dog stand, you know. So we're designing all that stuff.
Do you guys kind of, I guess, find that there are different, maybe geographical / cultural, I guess, differences in terms of what experience looks like that is maybe a different frame of reference? You know, like, you know, it's easy to kind of point to Disney. I worked on the Disney World in Florida and the MGM Studios backlot. You know, I was around theme parks all the time when I was with the company. So I get that frame of reference and how, for many people, Disney has sort of represented the standard. Mm-hmm. With that said, in the 21st century, who do you believe, in terms of the countries that you've designed for, are starting to take chances in new ways philosophically in experiential design? Things that where you want to find something that's relevant, but then it's something new. And it's got to be the hardest thing to navigate.
Yeah. You know, before Disneyland was ever on the map, the big component that everyone could go see were World's Fairs, and or now what they're called, their World Expos.
Yeah.
So, and they still exist. They just aren't, I guess, really, not a lot of people consider or think about them. But, you know, I think there's a World Expo coming up in Dubai if you know, the shutdowns don't cancel it. But, you know, that's another thing. But like conventions are sort of like a mini version of that, like Comic-Con, where everyone dresses up and is part of this culture. It's a really interesting part of location-based entertainment. Comic-Con was the birthplace of a lot of viral marketing, which is a lot of fun. You know, the Tron Legacy back in the day, they had a magnificent viral marketing campaign where they recreated Flynn's Arcade in downtown San Diego, and you could go play and put your quarters into the you know, the Atari machines there and play Tron, and you play all these other machines. And at one point, the wall opened up, and you walked into the grid, and you saw they revealed their Tron cycle. It was magnificent marketing. But that's just an example of sort of how experiential marketing and experience design varies quite a bit. In the sort of fine art field, we've seen a breakout with Meow Wolf. And Meow Wolf just opened their Las Vegas location. And that's more of like curated designers taking a space and creating. I mean, they're all unique in of themselves, but they have a common through like a thread that ties them all together into an overall experience. But it's really cool to go in there and see how it's more abstract, you know, and that's definitely more on the you can appreciate it kind of like a fine art gallery experience, but it's very story driven at the same time. So it's a little different spin on that. You know, different places around the world, you can see some of the theme parks that happen in Europe. Their influences are more European. So their influences on their theme park designs vary quite a bit. And same with Asia. You know, you go to China and see some of the things that they've been building the last 20 years. It's quite different as well, and pretty incredible.
Do you have any examples or anything like that you can point to that just to kind of help us fill in some of our visual imaginations? You know, I know
I don't want to mention it and then not actually. Yeah, so in Europe, the things that come to mind are some of the bigger parks over there called Europa Park and Efteling Park. Those are really great world-class theme parks that are unique in their own way. So in Asia, there, you know, Wanda Group they were big builders in the last 15, 20 years. In China, you have Ocean Park in China that are really big. Lots of really great aquariums being built over in China, and that's a lot of quality in the aquariums over there, and just massive scale. It's really, really cool. Yeah, and you know, it varies quite a bit, and you know, those things that that we were talking about, I showed in my portfolio just a little earlier in Dubai. That's a really unique. That has some interesting history. You know, they saw Florida and said, "Hey, we want to recreate Orlando in Dubai," and So they built in the last 20, 30 years an entire city and like all these theme parks. And so you get just a completely different set of circumstances because of all that. And you get, Warner Brothers World Abu Dhabi, which is the very first fully indoor theme park. It's one of a kind. And you can go experience Gotham City and Metropolis and Toontown, where they have Looney Tunes and Scooby Doo and things like that. So really unique theme park and world class. It's a really, really great project.
Cool. This is great. I was going to ask you about and maybe you already answered this, and I hope you started the conversation of my question for you is this: what led you to your decision to open Steadman Students? We know that you have a studio, but what was the linchpin? It wasn't literally too big a project and you just started bringing, or was there a specific, because you said you had another company before then, and then you kind of went to, this became the new company, I guess. So was it just, I want to do it better? What was the decision?
Yeah. Well, okay. So Opaque Creative was the company that I had with Hao Wu, and we created that studio for many projects that were kind of like in our laps at the time. We were freelancing together, working together on these projects, and we said, let's just make a company. And then we got a really big project that then we grew to like 25 people. And then after that and finished up, we wrapped that up. We decided, we didn't really want to do it anymore. We didn't want to do that anymore. So I rebranded for Steadman Design Studio, and Hao and I are great friends still. It's just a mutual decision, how these things go, So I rebranded to Steadman Design, put my name in it because I went back to basically freelancing, but on a much larger scale now after that studio. So it's similar to what I was saying before, where it was just kind of like, I get these projects, I'm going after these projects that are much larger than what I can do personally. And I learned through that experience just how much I love working with a team, the diversity of each member and their skill set, and we're coordinating and collaborating with people. I mean, I like that more now than doing images myself. I mean, I'd much rather work with a team now than just working by myself on whatever image that's currently on my plate.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and I guess you get a chance to help make each of them get better, in what they do, which is a big part of being a leader in your company. So that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to ask you, what are the real world challenges of having a studio? Because once you start having employees, and other things going on, you have to juggle sales, marketing, development, content creation, and just the practicals of paying the rent and making payroll. I mean, that's got to be, it's enough just to be good as a designer.
Yeah, I know. Since the creation of the studio, my skill sets then had to expand yet again. And now I'm dealing with all those, the management side of keeping a studio going from day to day. And I really enjoy that part of it. The leadership roles are great, but just the business side of it. And I learned a lot in the last 5-6 years since owning a studio. Just putting that into practice. I lean on a lot of people. So, I have a lot of really great team members that help me out with the practical things on operations side day to day. And I couldn't do it without them, honestly. I couldn't be creative without people like that. You kind of need to shut the doors and shut all that out and then quiet your mind to then open it up again. And that process of sort of like shifting the gear into creative mode, it can be really rough sometimes. That's probably the most difficult thing that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, of answering questions, answering emails throughout the day, dealing with, whatever tax thing that we're dealing with, or, paying bills and things like this. And then saying, okay, now I need to be creative director on this project. So when I was freelancing, my mind was geared toward long stretches of focus. So
Yeah.
I could focus in on this and paint for the next 8 hours or whatever, block of time. And I really enjoyed that. A rush in a way, or a Zen mode that kind of is a dopamine release in a way. I think it's a slow drip, but it's addictive, Now I'm in these short burst brainwave pattern where I'm like, focus on this, now focus on this, and focus on this, and then sometimes juggle, and switching that, like my head hurts, So that's something that I've been learning to do and getting better at, but it takes practice. It can be tough.
Cool. That's great. Now, does this kind of experience, because you're in a leadership role, translate to, I guess, the way you teach your class? Because obviously you hire people to help you with developing your vision. That interaction alone changes the way your creativity can extend. So is sort of the class that you teach with CGMA or at Art Center or, similar in the experience? Is that something that students can look forward to in terms of collaboration and feedback from you?
Yeah, so that experience, it helps a lot when looking for, well, I want to give, I want to be useful to anyone that takes my course. And I think one of the most useful things is you're not just learning these skills, but you're also putting that into a file or an image that you can help get you a job. That's the most useful thing I can probably give. So let me help you tailor this project. And my class is a little different, where the first assignment to the last assignment, they all build on one another. And I did that on purpose. I designed it so that you could put it into a mini portfolio design process piece. So you have like a little book that you could put and show to people of like, here's my attraction design and my facade design. And that's an example of some work that I did. And hopefully my advice, my experience working in the industry, I'm currently hiring people for jobs right now. So I'm going to be able to use that experience to help you get a job as best I can, So do the best I can.
So I guess the question I was going to say, for a lot of people not sure where they live in being able to, sometimes the student has to have a certain amount of prerequisites in terms of doing stuff. It says, what should they already know to benefit from your class? What are certain assumptions when someone comes to your class that you have, so that they could be a little bit more prepared to take on the new information that you're offering?
Yeah, I try to diversify the tools that I'm introducing. So, for example, I showed that that process with Photoshop 3D. That is the fourth week of my class. And not only do I talk about the Photoshop 3D, and then in week 6, we go over SketchUp and other modelers like Blender and Modo. So if you know 3D, great. But if you don't know 3D, I have something for you. So, you don't need to go take a bunch of courses in 3D to take my class. You don't necessarily need to know how to draw like a pro yet. I mean, we're students, we're all learning. So all levels of ability, I'm flexible enough that I can help you out. So if you're really just starting out and you don't feel very solid on a foundation, that's okay. I will teach you some foundation, and everyone can start drawing an elevation. That you don't need to understand perspective. You don't need to know, lensing and some of these more, complicated things that go into environment paintings like POVs. We can start you there, and with those tools, you can communicate what your experience will be.
Terrific. Excellent. So I guess then my question on, now we're starting to kind of get into the student part of the process. This is, what advice would you give a student interested in becoming an experiential designer, but is currently in a non-art job or at the beginning of their career?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of touched on this before. it's really great to get a studio job. You can look for a job at Disney, Universal, or some of these other studios that are occasionally doing theme parks. Paramount, Warner Brothers, Fox used to be one, not anymore.
What are the names of the kinds of entry-level jobs that usually, if you're going to aim for that, what are they kind of called? Are they similar to people who work in games or in film and just they're overlapping job roles, or is there a more specific thing that you're aiming for?
Yeah. If you have no experience, maybe, internship, that's kind of what I did. That's how I got started. Internships work really well. And sometimes they're just 4 months, but you can kind of like collect internships, go work for these guys, go work for that. So you get a varied experience. I think that's super helpful. If that's something that I didn't do that I regret doing. I stayed at the studio that I interned with. There was a lot of really great advantages of doing that I benefited from, but my experience in the studio system was just one studio. And it's a little, that's difficult. I think anyone that has the experience of kind of hopping around to a few different before settling down will tell you they learn quite a bit, sort of how that job operates and the variety of how that job can operate. It also helps you in negotiating, your pay when landing a job. So, that sort of thing will help. If you can't find a job doing art, maybe there's some other positions that you can do while you're building your portfolio, and you want to get in. I think it's worth considering for theme parks, because the education on the building side, on all these like diverse backgrounds that you'll be working with, it's good to know about that stuff. And sometimes the best way to learn about it is just, jumping right in. So a lot of people will just go get a job at the park, so that'll help you understanding operations, how the park, it's like a living, breathing organism. There's thousands of people that work at Disneyland that make that thing run. And seeing, the backstage area and how that operates is super helpful in designing the master plan and the facility and all that stuff. So that's really, really informative. You can go work for Disney or Universal. And another aspect really quick is live entertainment. You'll get on a live show or a stage show of some kind, and you kind of get some experience with producers and stage managers. That's a really great translation into a lot of different things, but it works well for theme parks as well, because the production is structured very similarly. You may even find an opportunity to get a production assistant job while you're building your portfolio. I know several people have done that and still have really great creative careers built off of something like that.
That's great. Cool. Thank you. So if I'm like, it's all about setting your own expectations for yourself and understanding what the expectations are. What should I have about getting a job in such a competitive work environment? Now, I say work environment because typically animation, film, VFX, what I call the darling kind of industries within entertainment design and production space. They got way more talent than roles, although things have been growing so much with COVID is like, let's make more animation. So animation's actually seeing a spike in a lot of hiring. I guess my question is, has the expectations since you first started in the business changed because of that competitive work, or is this still a space that hasn't really been visited much by a lot of people?
So it's a really great question. It's interesting. There's a little bit of forecasting involved in this. I see the theme park industry booming. And the reason I say that, even under the grim times that we've had in the last year, the reason for that is because there's such an influx of digital and the digital space, but also everyone's been cooped up for the last year.
Yes.
When things open, when things open, this industry is going to go crazy.
Yes.
So, and people are kind of speculating right now on Disneyland, like what are the lines going to be like when it opens?
You're not going to be able to build the park fast enough.
That's right. Yeah. So, our industry has experienced the highs and lows, natural highs and lows, kind of like a roller coaster. So it's it can be volatile because as the world markets undulate, the first thing that goes is live entertainment, and especially these projects, these really big projects that need a large capital investment. People are not going to invest if the market dips. So stuff like this kind of goes on the shelf for a little while, but then it comes back with like a vengeance. So it's like a roller coaster. That's something that you have to plan for. Save up a lot of money, as much money as you can, 6 months to a year. I mean, COVID's a good example of that. I lived off of a bunch of savings myself. We had much, the projects that I were working on, a lot of them got shelved. I think in the news just 2 days ago, one of those projects just said they were coming back. So a big Universal project. So it's coming back, and there's some hope. Yay! But
Yay!
Yeah. So this happened again back in 2008. So in my career, it's happened twice already, which goes to show you. So that's something to keep in mind. So the reason I bring that up is because you asked about competitiveness. I would say for anyone in this industry, you're competing to get that job when there's very little jobs. So lots of hungry mouths, very little food. So you want to be up there to get those jobs when there's a lot of people, there's a high demand on those downturns when the roller coaster dips. So that's what I would say. Other than that, this industry has very little competition amongst designers, and I say this, I guess, at some risk to my own career. I love that there's fewer designers, because that means I'm feasting. I'm doing great. But so this compared to like maybe the film industry, it's a massive contrast.
It's not as many boats in the harbor, so to speak. Yeah,
that's correct. And that's just because I think people just don't know about it. And I'm trying to wave that flag. I want people to come. Please join us in the theme park design industry. There's plenty of work to go around, and it's going to just get better.
All right. So I'm going to ask this question because this is like kind of sets up perfectly. It says, if I'm trying to go to get a job from you, all right, what should be on my portfolio if I'm trying to be an experiential design? What does Luke need to see to pull the trigger on saying, I'm going to take a chance on this guy, or this guy is like awesome?
Yeah.
What does awesome look like to Luke?
I don't really have any very specific in addition to maybe any other creative director or art director. So I think what I'll say is going to be repetitive to what you've heard, but essentially I really enjoy process. I like to see the process. Of course, I like to see beautiful paintings, but I want to know what it's like to work with you. If you don't show any sort of process in your portfolio, it's going to be difficult for me to know, like, what does a sketch look like? If I ask you to do a rough sketch in 4 hours, I don't want to see a half finished, like really tight rendering. And so a lot of people are hiring for jobs, they have the same sort of worry and fear about like, what's the work relationship going to be? So that has a lot to do with the type of person that I'm working with. I like to work with nice people that have a passion for creativity, because I'm going to be collaborating with you fairly closely. I want to keep working with you. So, it's not just about your portfolio. It's about who you are as a person. And I want to enjoy, working with you. So there's that side of it too. So yeah, 3D is helpful, but it's not absolutely needed. I'd say more than 3D, I want to see that you can draw really well. If you can draw really well, that's super useful, especially in what we do, because we're not, gosh, it's hard to describe because, you know, if you're from the film industry, a lot of those guys, they take a lot of pride in how fast they can pump out a really photorealistic image for like pre-production.
Yeah.
Like they can pump it out in 4 hours, or they maybe 2 or 3 in 4 hours. So that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Many times our projects aren't similar enough to be able to have a pipeline that works for just about anything, you know?
Yeah.
So all these projects vary so much that we have to really sit down and think through the restrictions of each one. And really it's, you know, because of that, we tend to slow down, and we need quick bursts of visualization, and that nothing beats the speed of pencil on paper. So if you can draw really well, that's a really good plus.
On that note, without wasting any more of Luke's precious and valuable time, we want to say collectively as well as individually, thank you. Thank you so much for spending, you know, an hour plus time with us about just giving us a glimpse into the world of experiential design. It's fascinating. I think there's so many outlets for creativity that allow potentially artists who have a combination of drawing skills, vision, a little bit of art history knowledge, and an interest in architecture, and all those things wrapped up together. This could be an exciting opportunity for you to put your talents to the test and maybe find a home for them. So for those of you guys interested in learning with Luke, please do. And definitely, you know, be a part of the conversation of experiential design. My name is Frank Cordero, and it's been a pleasure to host this webinar.